has created a new geopolitical context also in the of this threat are and have already approached our region. The Russian invasion has emphasized the geopolitical importance of Western Balkans, even among the skeptics, which have already realized, I hope so, that the Russian presence and influence in the Western Balkans region can be mitigated by fully integrating the Western Balkans in the European Union. But there is another new geopolitical context, which is related to the recent situation and provocations in the north of Republic of Kosovo, of aggression against the stability, the integrity, the independence, and law and order of Kosovo. But not only, it was also a grave threat to the security and stability of our whole region, with direct consequences for our common Europe. The killing of a Kosovo police officer in the line of duty makes this act of aggression even more tragic and painful. The perpetrators, organizers, instigators of this act must be held accountable and brought to justice the soonest possible. This is imperative in order not to allow a further escalation of the situation with possible irreversible consequences. On the other hand, also having a day of mourning for the members of the armed group that were neutralized by Kosovo's security forces was the worst signal that Serbia could possibly send to our region and to our Euro-Atlantic community. Respected representatives, the genesis of the Berlin process in 2014 were based on the need to strengthen cooperation among the 6 Western Balkan countries. And since the very beginning, 9 years before, there were these 2 goals. First, to improve communication, and second, to liberalize the movement of people, goods, capitals, a model of inspiration that comes from the genesis of European Union itself. The facilitated movement regime among the 6 Western Balkan countries enabled, though, identity cards, which I'm happy to be part of the responsibility of the Ministry of Interior, represents a regional agreement that fosters a more cohesive region, strengthening ties and offering numerous benefits to its residents. And since on my left side I have the Minister of Interior of Kosovo, I would like to emphasize the fact that together we have 26 agreements, only the 2 ministries of Interior, which I would like very much that this we can also do it with the other countries of the region. Notably, recent data from Albania's border crossings this year show that 8.5 million foreign citizens have entered Albanian territory for the first 8 months, which means that by the end of this year, we will be above 10 million. And this is an increase of almost 2 million comparing to the same period of 2022. Out of these numbers, roughly 3.2 million entries have been registered from Kosovo, Montenegro 700,000, North Macedonia 500,000, And this demonstrates not only the free movement in the region, but also shows that the Western Balkans are considered as a common tourist destination. We are using the same market. Our collective aspirations for the future are notably ambitious. We aim for the harmonization of border control systems. That was one of the discussions I already had with Mrs. Sveçla before coming to this event. The creation of shared spaces for movement and the guarantee for regional security. However, as we facilitate the movement of people and goods, a paramount challenge emerges: the exploitation of the Western Balkans as transit routes for irregular migration. In response to the Trilateral Police Cooperation Center, Albania, Kosovo, and Montenegro, has been operational since 2018, playing an essential role in curbing various forms of cross-border crime and irregular migration. Significantly, Frontex presence in Albania is crucial as it works to oversee the operations of the border police at key points and deploys its forces along the green border. Last but not least, another pressing concern demanding our collective attention is the cyber threats. Although we have adeptly managed these challenges thanks to unwavering support and expertise of our strategic allies, and I would like to be very thankful to the United States of America and also other partners, a vital component has been missing: a proactive early warning system to address these threats in advance. And here there is need to have a common approach by all the 6 Western Balkan countries. Consistent with the consensus from the ministerial meeting on the same day, 1 month ahead, there was a strong recommendation for regional cooperation to establish a cyber security center, which I'll be the first to propose it, and I was first to propose it to be held in Tirana. This center would act as a nexus for sharing best practices and experiences, recognizing both the cross-border nature of threats and the inherent fragility of our technological frameworks. Cybercrimes require specialized focus, and the Western Balkans nations have yet to cultivate a sustained cooperation in this domain. Committed support from the European Union, which Prime Minister Rama will reiterate it during the leaders' meeting, presents the most prudent avenue to proactively address these significant challenges. I will stop here, and I thank you all for the attention and ready to answer any question. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Minister Balla. I know that you have to leave earlier, so I'd like to follow up with the question for you. You pointed out the very important agreements that have been signed, and thank you for giving us an comprehensive picture. I see that you have already taken some of the recommendations, so good job, Danny, on that, from the working group. But actually, what has happened in the Balkans in the last 25, 30 years is that we have a proliferation of signed agreements. What is missing is lack of implementation of those agreements, lack of transparency, lack of accountability, and mechanisms to really hold those that are responsible accountable for the implementation. So that will be my follow-up question. And then another related to that, you talked about the hard security, how important that is, but also the hybrid challenges. So I'll give you the data from the Western Balkan Security Meter. And among the top 5 challenges that people see in the region, the first one is economic crisis, poverty, and social exclusion. And the second one is crime, organized crime, drug trafficking, and violence. And those are some of the challenges that are pointed out also from the European Commission and European Council when it comes to the slow process of integration.
I think I'm allowed not to agree with what you mentioned. So
Yes. We agree to disagree.
So as I mentioned during my intervention, we have 26 agreements between the Ministry of Interior of Albania and the Ministry of Interior of Kosovo. And all these 26 agreements are in place and are implemented.
No, I was talking about regional agreements, not
Okay.
specifically the agreements that you mentioned.
As you know, also the agreement on the ID cards, for example, was a very one of the very most important agreements region. Serbia has already passed it in its parliament in June. So basically, we are already now starting the complete, let's say, implementation. Surely, there is a lot of things to do, and I'm not saying that you are not right on pointing this out. But I would like to have another approach when it comes to another, let's say, big question. Okay, we, the Balkans, are the best students. We didn't do as much as we can. But the question is, did the European Union did its homework? In 2003, we were both working together, and it's 20 years now, and you remember there was the Thessaloniki summit, and I remember that one of the statements, and then there was a toast by the hosts, Prime Minister Simitis and George Papandreou, and they were saying, look, I have a toast. In 20 years from now, the Western Balkans are going to be part of the European Union. The only thing that has happened is that the 20 years have passed, but we are not in the European Union. So basically, I think that we all are doing what we can. Surely we have to improve. But that's the reason I mentioned two very important new geopolitical happenings. The war in Ukraine and the last developments in the north of Kosovo. And I think that those who are coming tomorrow and the day after tomorrow in Tirana at the Leaders Summit of the Berlin process, President Macron, Chancellor Scholz, European Commission President von der Leyen, and all the other prime ministers, leaders, representatives have to understand one thing. It was very good what they did with Ukraine in March 2022 to give the candidate status. And there were no conditions, there were no criteria. And I think that what is very important to be understood is that as soon the Western Balkans are part of the European Union, it will give a new impetus and will give a new incentive to a broader cooperation, peace and stability in our region. So I didn't agree with you at the beginning, but I agree with you at the end that surely it is everybody has to do his duty. We, the Western Balkans, will do our homeworks, but if European Union will not do its big homework, then everything will go to, I mean, people in our countries will lose patience. So I think that there is something that is from both sides.
This is a great moment, I think, of opportunity for the region to use the momentum, as you point out, that enlargement has become really, again, geopolitical, geostrategic for the European Union. So thank you for your points. Now I'd like to give the floor to Minister Sveçla. Very much, the questions are the same. Where are we in terms of regional cooperation? What needs to be done more? And what will be some of your takeaways also from the summit, from the meeting that took place a few weeks ago here?
Thank you, Valbona. Dear co-panelists, Minister, dear participants, of course, I'm very honored to be here today on this panel. It is very difficult to say a lot of smart things in such short time, but especially in these dynamic times. Of course, I consider every such discussion initiative on this topic particularly useful, considering that regional cooperation is one of the points through which development, security, and stability are guaranteed. In our experience, we have felt better and more clearly what everyone knows, that the quality of democracy and institutions are the decisive factor in the expansion of crime. Autocratic states need ambiguous and low sovereign areas. Even more, territorialist states, they turn these unclear areas into war zones in the next day. As the Ministry of Internal Affairs responsible for public safety, public order, rule of law, and security of our borders, we are continuously engaged in building capacities that deepen cooperation between the states of the region and in initiatives aimed at the development of our republic. And I will mention them briefly and quickly. As Minister Balla said, with the Republic of Albania, we have 26 cooperation agreements in security fields, which include joint border activities, joint police operations, joint border crossing points, migration, etc. We have recently signed the 14th security agreement with the Republic of North Macedonia, which includes joint border crossing points. With Montenegro, we have 9 agreements in the field of security, and recently we closed in full cooperation 6 illegal roads, through which in the past the development of illegal activities was made possible. With Serbia, unfortunately, I have nothing to present on agreement or cooperation and operation of our institutions, because in addition to not being ready for such processes, it continues to have territorial aims toward our republic. This positioning of Serbia is dangerous not only for Kosovo, but also for peace and stability in the region and beyond. When I talk about cross-border cooperation with other countries, the special units of Serbia, by political order from Belgrade, entered deep into our territory and kidnapped 3 of our police officers. Tomorrow marks 21 days since the terrorist attack in the village of Banjska in the municipality of Zvečan, in north of our country. We have provided international institutions and the public with all evidences that proves that Serbia is engaged with all its state capacities behind this terrorist attack. Serbia and its president, Vučić, supported this attack politically. Everyone has seen with images that Milan Radojčić participated in the meetings of Security Council of Serbia alongside the Serbian president. The same one who declared after the facts came out that he led these terrorist units. The evidence of his closeness to the president of Serbia was reconfirmed when he was released after a few hours by Serbian authorities. I didn't have illusion that he will be kept in prison. Some did. To make matter worse, Vučić publicly declares that he does not accept his extradition and to Kosovo and the rest of this terrorist group. From the footages that we seized on the drones, we have proven that Serbia also supported the attack logistically when in its state military base, Pasuljanske Doline, it trained and prepared the terrorists for the attack. And it has supported it financially, give its military armament to terrorist group to annex the north of our country. We have published the evidences that these weapons came from military barracks. Our police officer, Afrin Bunjak, was killed in an ambush that day by these terrorists with an anti-personnel mine, which was produced and brought from Serbia. Most of the weapons that we've seized, they come from Serbia. They are produced and came from barracks of Serbia, with few coming from Russia. With this attack, through the maps and plans that we have seized, Serbia has aimed at annexing the north of our country, that is copying what Russia did with Crimea and Donbass. For more than 2 years, our institutions and state officials have been attacked 95 times in the north of the Republic of Kosovo. These attacks came from criminal gangs that have been led directly by Belgrade. We have faced road barricades and blocking of our officers whenever we have made legitimate decisions or fought criminals. Civil society and our citizens of Serbian community continue to face blackmail and threats from Belgrade. All this time, we have held meetings with civil society coming from this community. Unfortunately, these meetings had to be held in secrecy because of the threats coming from Belgrade and concrete attacks that they were faced with. On May 29th, we witnessed attack on K4 soldiers on Sveçla. 93 soldiers were wounded. 3 of them lost their limbs. Some of the criminals which are identified on the 24th of September attack are the same who participated in an attack on K4 soldiers. This, together with kidnapping of our 3 police officers, tells us that tolerating such activities will only hamper stability, will only make more serious situation. International community didn't identify properly and didn't condemn a kidnapping of our 3 police officers. Also didn't identify the problems in 29th of May, when its soldiers were attacked. This led to more serious attack of these terrorist units. And in so many meetings with international community representatives, I've said it's not enough to condemn. It's time that we sanction this criminal behavior. So Serbia's support and international community's soft approach brings the situation more dangerous. I don't think that there is a room for illusions anymore and for naivety, especially what we are seeing in other parts of the globe that we all live in.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Minister. What you pointed out actually shows how fragile peace and stability is in the Western Balkans and why it's important that the region, the entire region really speeds up its process of not only Euro-Atlantic integration, but also reconciliation. Because since the early 90s, we were talking with Josip, since the early 90s, that those have been the two mainstreams, economic integration that will bring reconciliation in the region, but unfortunately, the unacceptable situation, the coordinated criminal attacks more recently in Kosovo have shown that we have seen backsliding when it comes to that regional cooperation. And that's why it makes it even more urgent, the process for resolving those bilateral issues that block the Balkans, the Western Balkans, from developing and converging with the rest of the Western Europe. Minister Brkic, so you have been part, Minister Balla mentioned the 2003 Thessaloniki summit, and I know that you were part of the delegation there, and you have also been part of the delegations when the Stability Pact back in the 90s started. And it seems like we're talking about the very same topics in the last 23, 25 years. What went wrong? What do we need to do differently on both sides, on the Western Balkan side and on the side of the international community?
First of all, allow me to thank the organizers for inviting me and having me here to discuss on such an important topic. And thank you for using candid words to say that I'm old, meaning that I was there 20 years ago. Yeah. The cooperation, regional cooperation on the security issues started in the year 1999, 2000, when in Sarajevo, in the city with the largest siege during the war of the 90s, and I believe, Minister, that it was just lapsus calami that you have said that war in Ukraine is the first one after the Second World War. Sorry, lapsus linguae, because, Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina were the targets of the brutal aggression back in the 90s. So, but this is the city where I was born, that also in the 1984 hosted 14 Winter Olympic Games. And in the first half of my life, when I'm 49, this 1999 was the event where we had all world leaders organizing Stability Pact that was about to be a new leaf in the regional cooperation for the entire region. Security dimension was one of them. And there was a working table 3 dealing with the security issues and 2 sub-tables. One of them was for the defense, and another one was for the justice and home affairs. And a paradox is that maybe more success was in this defense part than in the justice and home affairs. Because in 2014, we took the regional ownership under the Regional Arms Control and Verification. We had the Kosovar Center in Zagreb, which is a very good partner for the NATO and all the NATO partners within the region. So on this side, we had to, show the progress. On the other table in the Justice and Home Affairs, we see that, from Thessaloniki and this 20-year-old political promise to become members of the European Union, only one country, Croatia, did it 10 years ago, 2013. And in May next year, we are going to also mark 20 years of Big Bang 2004. It is needed at least two for tango in terms of why are we where we are in the turmoil, the political and security situation throughout the region, and why also within the European Union there was no political readiness to deal with the enlargement in the past years. I'm saying this from the position of a Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of Bosnia and Herzegovina for the past 9 years. This is my third consecutive term in the office, but also I was working the Foreign Ministry and around the Foreign Ministry for the past 20 years. So I see that the Renaissance days of the enlargement were behind us until continued aggression of Russia to Ukraine, which started 2014 and continued in 2022, put the new light on the Southeast Europe or the Western Balkans. In particular with the, I think, galvanizing statements of Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg and also High Rep Josep Borrell, who singled out Bosnia and Herzegovina and Moldova just a couple of days after continued aggression of Russia to Ukraine, February last year, as the countries of potential spillover, effect of the negatives of that war in Ukraine. And this started, the new view, or put the new glasses of the EU when it comes to the enlargement. It is good that all what is floating around as the suggestions and the regional platforms for the cooperation are there for the benefit of bigger integration of Southeast Europe into the European Union, because from time to time it's also relevant to remind ourselves that we are no less Europeans than the one who are in the European Union, because our social, cultural, historic, religious background, whatever it is attached to our identity, is no less European than the one of the EU. But this is still step that we have to do, is basically, to become a part of the European Union. Second message is that this political momentum needs to be taken in order to fulfill, of course, Thessaloniki promise, but also to stabilize the entire political situation in the region of Southeast Europe. We can do it by focusing on positive achievements within the countries and in cross-border or regional cooperation, aligning with the common foreign security policy of the EU, aligning our visa policy towards the European Union, trying to minimize all the legal ways of potential illegal migrants who are using the territory of the Southeast Europe to come into the European Union, and of course fostering the cooperation with, in my firm belief, with the NATO in this region. This political momentum will not, last for long. Is it as strong as I would personally love it or want it? No, because even what the President Charles Michel mentioned in Bled forum, that 2030 both sides needs to be ready, is giving the date, but also is giving catch-22 conditionality. Enlargement should not be underlining, should not be the hostage of the internal composition or internal reshuffling within the European Union, because we can become member countries according to current treaties, full stop. There is no legal obstacle for this. There is a political obstacle to this, because they would like to have more efficient decision-making within the European Union on many topics. That's fine, legitimate. But from the legal point of view, there is no any obstacle, because the current treaties are allowing us to become the members. So we don't have to wait that the treaties are changed to become a member. Yes, but we have to, try to work on our own, on our side, to come up with the Copenhagen and all the other criteria which are in front of us. and where we are standing right now. I'm going to talk on behalf of my country. We gained the candidacy status December last year. Bosnia and Herzegovina applied for the membership February 2016. So basically, we are 6.5 years after. What helped my country to get the candidacy status was the fact that Moldova and Ukraine applied for the membership in February, March 2022, and get the candidacy status in June 2022. So for something that needed for Bosnia and Herzegovina 6 and some years, since 6.5 years, Ukraine and Moldova could do it in 3 months. I don't believe, with a strong support to our friends in Ukraine and Moldova, that there, administrative capacities are that better than in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but it's just from the other side that the political will changed and pushed into this direction. Today, we are expecting to open negotiations in December this year. Equally as Ukraine and Moldova are rightfully expecting the same. We are believe also that Albania on the second IGC will push on their own agenda, like all the countries in the region, so that with the palpable results, we show that the enlargement as such is there. I was referring to the enlargement previous one, the Big Bang and the latest Croatian one. From the negotiation, apply for the membership, to become a member. The best student in the class was Slovenia, 8 years and something. Today, Bosnia and Herzegovina is close 7 years plus without decision to open negotiations. So definitely, if we don't catch this train, it's going to be for the enlargement, I would say, another dragging game where we have to do our part, of course, which is political stability, regional cooperation, and trying to resolve all what is depending on us. What does not depend on us, we can only push the others to do their part of the homework, and constantly reminding them that they made a promise 20 years ago for us to become part of the political Europe, because once again, we are no less Europeans than the ones who are living in the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you, Josip. One quick point. Then should we change the narrative? You mentioned the 2030. Shouldn't the governments on the Western Balkans, Bosnia and Herzegovina, say that, yes, we by 2030 will be ready, and so will be contributors to the European security, for that matter, even transatlantic security? We have seen cases during the migration crisis that the Western Balkan countries were brought at the table together with the EU countries, and they were part of solutions. So maybe shouldn't we change the narrative that the Western Balkans needs to be seen as part of European solutions when it comes to security?
Fully agree with you, because there are so many, where there is a will, there is a way. So this increased will from the EU side and also from our side, we have to just find a way how to, best fit it, that we are together at the same table discussing the policies which are of common interest. But honestly, I don't just want to sit with the EU on the table of the illegal migrations.
Exactly.
I want to I want to sit together with them on the issues which are of common interest, and I would say our common obligation.
Energy, but also when it comes to malign influences, because we did not mention yet in the panel that this area, this region, can become part of strategic competition. And in everything that we have seen in recent months in terms of backsliding, there's been malign influence out there too. And we can mention that, Russia, through the disinformation campaigns, through the hybrid tools that's using. So that is why, looking at being part of, solving issues that are very important also for the European Union. Now I'd like to turn to Sonia, and Sonia, you have done a lot of research on the topic. I think your PhD also was on regional cooperation. So my question for you is, what kind of security cooperation do we need for a common regional market? The entire conversation this morning was how to advance economic development in the region, how to advance economic and social convergence with the Western European countries. But we know that need to fix the issues with the fundamentals, with the rule of law, with strong institutions and regional cooperation. So over to you.
Thank you. Merdita, it's great to be back to Tirana. I won't be using much of Albanian, but I might say one phrase I've learned 20 years ago, thanks to Open Society Foundation, and that's Ljem te dua. And those that want to find out how I learned it can ask me later in a break. After this optimistic note, and before I answer your question, if I can ask our audience to vote by raising hand to 2 questions, just as a warm-up to our discussion, okay? So first question, who of you is afraid of war in this region in next 5 years? Please take photo. It's a majority of people. Who of you is afraid of violence in your country at the level below the law, like massive killing we had in Belgrade this spring, or interethnic or other type of violence? Okay, almost the same. Okay. So this other type of issue is not part of discussions yet. We are mostly discussing either war or market, and we are discussing the official cooperation there to prevent problems for the big ones and not really for the people. So I want to make my argument first and then give argumentation. So there is no single market, common market in the region without the security and justice area for the market, and we don't have it at this moment. We don't have it for a few reasons. There has been a lot of progress in regards to security. And as you mentioned, Valbona, there are so many agreements. But what is missing in these regional arrangements that we have is that Kosovo is not part of many of the key law enforcement tools geographically. And then the second is that all of this is focused on issues that concern EU and also our citizens, like migration, organized crime, cyber, but are not followed up with the measures that address the justice component of the zone. And I don't mean just the judicial cooperation and prosecution. I mean the logic of things that if we fix the infrastructure, the energy, connectivity, we will live in peace, does not work here, especially if the politicians in power are using it also to pull out resources. So this is why in the paper that I worked on together with Dani and other colleagues from the region, we've said it's very important not just to support big infrastructure works, green energy, and so on, but also to look at the who are the owners and who are the investors. And not just because of fear of third parties, China, Russia, and so on, but also because our mafia and politicians work perfectly well when a money laundering needs to be done. So I wouldn't be surprised that the big Serbian bosses would use all these agreements mentioned here to do some investment in Albanian tourism, because it's further away from their scrutiny than maybe tourism in everywhere in the region. They can make a deal. So the way looking. For example, the most ridiculous example, it's not the tourism and it's not investment, but this example from a few weeks ago of a tunnel that was dug into the court in Podgorica. And the way it was found, it's almost a comedy that they said we wouldn't notice it until we realized that there was a draft. Nobody would check the court and the way evidence is taken. So my point is that we need the compensatory measures to all these integration in the security field that deal with the risk of corruption, and that provide also for the oversight of how these things are done. Because what I'm afraid the most is that we will be fully integrated into EU when it comes to security. There is no dilemma. Whether or not we are members, whatever the date and who comes first or the last, the whole of the region is going to be integrated when it comes to security, because that's what hurts EU member states. And we have seen these moves of externalization of European security through making deals with undemocratic leaders, like in Tunisia, for migration. And unless we change things in our region, at some point they will give up, because what I've heard so far in these two panels is us just complaining, and with the reasons, but complaining and, asking for them to take us as we are. So I think we need the justice compensation and we need oversight. And this is also why in this paper, we ask concretely from the Berlin process to fulfill the obligation given in London. And this is that there'll be a track made of what are the commitments in security fields and what has been done. And that would be shared also with civil society, because this is something where we have a gap in the region. In contrast to the EU, where security integration goes fast, but you have a remedy. If you suspect that somebody misused your personal data and put it in Europol database, you can address it through the EU data protection mechanism and find out and take the judicial measures. And we don't have such measures. So I'm very afraid of scenario in which we fully integrate security-wise in EU. We even have economic integration, but we don't have democracy. And in this scenario, maybe Vučić won't work with Prime Minister Kurti, but he will work with some others to, when necessary, transnationally pursue those that criticize him and use the security means against those that think differently. And last but not the least, to come back to the questions I've asked you guys in the audience, is this issue of violence that is really reminding of going back to the 90s, but not in a sense of wars. I'm really don't think the wars are real or the biggest threat at this moment. I think that the violence governing through the fear is common throughout the region, and not just in a sense of speaking about other nation or other state, but within the societies. Because when you have afraid citizens, when you have citizens who think of who are traitors, who are true patriots, who are, true modernists, who are critics of modernism because of, highlighting issues of environmental activism, when you have polarized society, you can't have mobilization. And that's when community bonds break. So what we see now in the region, and I think you gave this pulse very well, is people distrusting each other. A few days ago, one of the Serbian organizations, CRTA, published a poll in which they found out that, and I'm going to read the percentage, more than 2/3 of Serbian citizens do not, every third person is angry, and only 20% believe other people in society. So every fifth would believe its own, citizen, neighbor, relative. When you don't trust people around you, and you don't trust institutions, which is a common thing throughout the region, the only left tool is to take the justice and protection into your own hands. And this is a dangerous path. And if this is followed with the rhetorics by politicians where they perpetuate this polarization, this distrust, we are going to see more and more tragic incidents like the ones we've experienced this spring and autumn. And this is why I'm afraid of violence within the same ethnic groups, between the different ethnic groups, but below the level of wars, and also towards all these people coming to our region, and that are going to come in bigger numbers in years to come because of all the crises around us. To sum up, the worst scenario is not that we continue as we are doing. For me, the worst scenario is that on paper we look good, that we integrate well, implement the common economic area, implement the security integration, but stay without democracy and without dealing with everyday concerns of safety and rights of people.
Well, thank you, Sonia. I think, you pointed out that one of the weaknesses of the EU enlargement process from the EU perspective too was that security was over democracy in the region for some times, or stability, not security. Stability was, and so that's why we're talking about, stabilicracy in the region in the last few years. But you pointed out polls, and I'll go back to Josip that said that we're seeing now that both Ukraine and Moldova are kind of the main drivers of the EU integration process. And I think, we should, work together in terms of moving also our countries there, because there's optimism there. 90% of the population in Ukraine believes in the EU integration process. I think it's more than 30% in Serbia that thinks that Serbia will never become an EU member, or even higher, because I think the regional average is like 30%. And so I think an important element from the perspective of security is also looking at, divisions and disinformation that external actors are bringing to our societies and splitting, using internal weaknesses in the society and splitting what you're saying, the social.
We can argue, are they using or they're allowed to? I would always say that all external influence, at least in my home country, is facilitated by domestic actors. And I believe the same case is throughout the region. So I think the key is to deal with our domestic politics. And that's the best prevention tool of external malign influence.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonia. Dani, I'll turn last but not least. So, you have done, if I look here at the paper, you have had so many meetings, have got great group of experts focusing on the area of regional security. You have some great recommendations. One that, I looked at, it was very interesting. Some were mentioned in terms of cybersecurity. I think Sonia was mentioning also this, that the Berlin process should have also steering committee, security steering committee that will also look at the implementation of all those agreements. An interesting one also was on foreign direct investment. And I'd like to hear your perspective more on that, but also if you want to point out to other issues that came up during the discussion that maybe did not take, are not here in this paper, but you could share with us.
Well, thanks, Valbona, and it's a pleasure to be here today to share some of those discussions we had. There's an amazing team of experts from the region. Me and Adelina compiled the paper together, and me and Sonia are here in the panel, but we had fantastic group of people contributing to all of these recommendations. We have Lady Dervishi, we have Misha Popovic, who works exactly on this foreign direct investment for some time. We had Stefan Vladisavljev from BFP, Nermina Kolugliazol from Sarajevo, and we had Milica Kovacevic from Montenegro, alongside Lady Feta from Mediamep. So amazing group of people who contributed to all of these recommendations. And so if it's okay, I will just highlight three from each.
Sure.
So we divided recommendations to the countries of the Western Balkans, recommendations to the member states of the Berlin process and the European Union. It was made clear to us in Brussels and Berlin that we shouldn't mix Berlin process or equate it with EU, although from our discussions, I think there is a symbiotic relationship between the two, and difficult to understand the need to decouple both, as I think the fundamental objective of the Berlin process is right to contribute to European integration. So, and to civil society and other actors. So to countries of the Western Balkans, one thing we discussed, which is a key concern, is the language. We appeal to leaders to have more reconciliatory messages, because the rhetorics are really translating into concrete security concerns for the community in our countries. And we discussed this quite extensively, and we hope that this message will be taken on board when the leaders meet next week, and they try to promote more kind of the messages that would not demonize particular groups or try to blame collective or promote collective blame on a particular groups for whatever issues we are dealing with. These are leading to political extremism or growing political extremism and ethno-political radicalization. And what these do automatically is undermine the entire regional and European integration process. Second is the establishing of a screening mechanism on foreign direct investment. This is something colleagues from Macedonia have been working for a while now. This is linked to malign foreign influence, and it's corrosive capital and also organized corruption, as Sonia likes to use this concept. So what we are hoping here is that we have mechanisms through which every government in the Western Balkans shares and cooperates in screening foreign investments. And we changed it to investments in general, so not just foreign direct investments, because sometimes it's not just, we tend to look at FDI generally through a positive view in our region, but there is a lot of behind the scene there on those investments. Third is that what we are asking governments from the region is to conclude cooperation agreements with European Public Prosecutor's Office by 2024. I think this will be very, very important. Now to the EU and the members of the Berlin, or countries of the Berlin process. We have looked at reconciliation. This was an important conversation in our working group about reconciliation fundamentally being a major obstacle for the region moving towards more integrative approaches in dealing with each other, but in general promoting integration. We have competing narratives about the brutality of the wars in the 90s, and these undermine both at the community level and political level cooperation. What we suggest to the EU is to come up with a facility that is dedicated solely to reconciliation and working at the grassroots level to promote this reconciliation. We look at the case of Northern Ireland, for instance, where the EU has invested over 2 billion euros just in reconciliation efforts since 1998 when the Good Friday Agreement was signed. So something similar. This is not to say EU is not investing. So if there's any EU colleagues here, this is not the criticism, but more about how we can further advance. Yeah, invest more. Second recommendation is about, as you mentioned, this was in line with the speech of von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, that the Western Balkan countries are integrated in the cybersecurity framework. This would include also the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity. There was a meeting this June at the working group level, and it seems that they are ready to move towards this next level. But this is fundamental. We are in Albania. That is just, I think, a couple of weeks ago, there was an attack towards a cyber security threat. So it's transnational, it requires cooperation. In Montenegro, the French and German are supporting a building of cybersecurity center, and we think this should be very inclusive. So our appeal is that it makes sure that every government in the region is included in that. Third recommendation is about joining the Western Balkan 6, and you mentioned this, Valbona, joining the EU rule of law report, so that there is this particular focus on the EU rule of law report. And the fourth is, last for the EU, is rationalization of regional cooperation initiatives. There's a lot of regional cooperation initiatives. We need to have a report and assessment by RCC potentially, or EU itself, that comes up with concrete recommendations how we can rationalize those initiatives, but also make it more inclusive. Kosovo is not part of many of these initiatives, and this really needs to be rectified because it undermines the entire regional security cooperation. So regional security cooperation needs to be very inclusive, and this is key, I think, to also addressing the issue that was mentioned here, which is trust, right? How we overcome the trust barriers. And for civil society and media, and this is the last I would share here, and I know the paper will come out. This is about disinformation, and this is also linked to malign foreign influence. We see that media play a crucial role in both addressing disinformation, countering, as well as countering disinformation efforts. And we do not see, though, sufficient support. There is some support out there, both in terms of, for instance, Tirana is doing this brilliant work, and Zašto ne in Bosnia on dealing with these issues. There's across the board a lot of efforts on fact-checking information and things like that, but there needs to be a more concerted effort in this issue, and we come up with this recommendation as well. And again, just to thank everyone, we had brilliant, again, global initiative, for instance, Southeast Europe Association, we had Institute on Foreign Relations from Germany. All of these recommendations, I think, speak to perhaps, although we like to call ourselves experienced optimists, therefore pessimists sometimes, but I don't think we raise the bar very high in terms of what we're asking. I think there's very concrete, very, I think, important steps in the right direction to address the trust issues.
Well, thank you, Danny. Thank you for the great work you have done. Maybe we should add another recommendation that will be more funding for the civil society, because it's been a driving force in the Western Balkans, in the EU integration process. So that will also help bringing more expertise and having more mobilization also of the civil society. When I talk here, not just about the think tankers, but the public, because many of the questions that we are talking among each other are not well understood by the public. So I think more stronger, communication campaigns, open, broader ones, will help achieve the objectives. We have about 15 minutes of time because we started later. And so I'd like to open the floor for questions. We'll start here. Yes, we'll bring the microphone.
Thank you very much, Valbona. It was quite interesting discussion, in fact. My name is Fationa Meidini. I am the director for Southeastern Europe at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. And as the name of the organization indicates, my question is going to be focused on organized crime. In fact, fighting organized crime today in this region is difficult because many barriers exist, and including sometimes political protection, and also political patronage of the criminal elements, and we have seen this across the region. My question, in fact, it's primarily directed to Mr. Sveçla, but also the deputy Bosnian minister. Do you really think that the Berlin process has the potential to create mechanisms that will help you collaborate in tackling organized crime? And I mean here concrete kind of like mechanism in between you, Serbia, in between Bosnia, Serbia, Albania, North Macedonia. Do you think that is this potential there? Thank you.
Well, I don't think that any process can help us if there's no will of the actors itself. So if one side supports organized crime, if one side is part of organized crime, then there's no process that can help on fighting organized crime, which is regional. Usually, it's known fact that criminals, they collaborate much faster than governments. But cooperation between governments is impossible if one side is on the side of the organized crime. The best example is 4 northern municipalities in Kosovo. It was a safe haven for criminals because they were untouchable there. The situation there reminds me of this commercial movie John Wick, where there is a hotel where criminals can go there and they don't even attack each other, even though they are enemies. The north part of Kosovo used to be like that, where no security institution could reach them. And even further on, what's worse, they were protected by security institutions. So it has to be kind of an agreement amongst representatives of the country that they have a common goal. If there's no agreement on this, if there's no will for that, then I don't believe external initiatives can help. Sometimes we use these processes so we fill up some ticks, which are important, but I don't think it's a priority. If we don't strive to build democratic states, if we don't want rule of law to prevail, no external powers can force you that. And we know from examples, not only on the region, that when the leadership is not keen to rule of law, then yeah, countries might be sanctioned, isolated, people will suffer, but in short and middle term, there's no change of situation. What we need now is really kind of commitment of not just political leadership toward European integration. We have different situation in different countries, so you cannot use the same formula. In some countries, there is vast majority in support on integration as an idea, as a process. In some countries, that's not the case. So what we're talking about?
If I may just follow up, Minister, on that question, and I think it deals with the forum itself, but the question relates to that. You don't see, you're not optimistic, and I completely understand in the short, medium term. How important is the work that the civil society is doing, representative from each country coming together, like in this forum, and working towards agreed, objectives?
Well, absolutely, it's the work of civil society is important. Sometimes they remind me that the world is more normal than political elites. But I think the pressure should be much bigger toward political elites than it is now. So societies should get more organized into pressuring the change rather than just requesting the change or offering recipes for a change. Coming myself from the civil society in my past, and that reminds us, as colleague said, how old we are. Actually, I think civil society should be much more vocal into pushing for proper right system of values that societies thrive.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Sonia, you had a comment?
Yeah, I think this is the key question of everything we discuss. How we are going to make those that create problems give up the power and privilege of the power they have. The good thing that I found during my PhD, where I was looking how police officers and Serbian police officers, in contrast to other countries, have also fought in wars, and almost all of them were deployed in Kosovo during state of emergency. So we're doing tasks that are not regular police tasks. But my question was why and how they got to build the trust and cooperate. And you realize that they have the same professional interests, especially criminal investigators. They bond quickly. And I've heard of a couple of stories, even between Serbia and Kosovo, when politicians did not want to work together, but where they worked informally together. So Špend Kursani, our common friend, presented that one case when two of the Serbian criminals ran away to Kosovo, and there was an unofficial deal to give them back. But what Serbian police officer was telling me also very passionately about was this tragic incident back in 2015. If you remember, there's a big move of Kosovo Albanians toward Western Europe, and there was a bus that fell into Tisa River in the winter in Vojvodina, and more than 20 people died. And they were moved by the fact that there were many kids there. So Serbian gendarmerie that is deployed constantly on the border in the boundary line with Kosovo was diving in the minus something. I don't know how many times they felt that it's important to investigate it properly to do this research on smuggling. That's the good news, that professionals want to do their job. But the bad news, and this is something we have also heard when we were preparing for the London meeting 4 years ago of the same process, was that throughout the region, they are not allowed to do law enforcement or justice provision indiscriminately, but it's very selective. Sometimes it's selective to protect, as you said, the close cronies of the party on power. Sometimes it's selective on ethnic basis. And here I would maybe dispute with Minister. I think it's important, of course, to have rule of law throughout the country, but if it is portrayed that the rule of law is an issue of ethnicity, that, you know, that distance is part of population. And I'm not saying that the searches and work should not be done in the north, but the question is how to build the trust with the population that is afraid both of these criminals, but also of very severe law enforcement. And we mentioned Northern Ireland a couple of times. And what Brits, for example, learned is that when they go full scale with a lot of weapons, they're going to create more insecurity. So they were one of the rare law enforcement forces that learned how to do it in a less threatening way. And you know, all guys from Afghanistan, when there were teams where they learned that not going with the full body armored, with the special forces, that scares people. So I think it's very important to think, and I don't have solution, how we can promote. I think keeping civil society demand is one of the tools. If we can get allies from within the profession, so protection for whistleblowers, and from outside to put the pressure, maybe we manage to curtail a bit this impunity that we see and selective justice that we see.
Thank you, Sonia. Yes.
One clarification. Well, when I talk about 4 municipalities in the north, I never think of ethnicity. Usually the gangs are mixed. One of the hardest moments that we had in North Mitrovica was when police was attacked because they went to search a pharmacy owned by Albania. So, and the attack came from everyone. So it was a gang, mixed gang. It has nothing to do with ethnicity. Now, exposure of police. I just received a message. We are doing some raids. We just confiscated in North Mitrovica in flats in a building, several hand rocket launchers, mines with a clock, explosives, Kalashnikovs. So I am against this exposure of full body armor, but the executed police officer was coming from an ordinary police. So police is responding at the minimum of what is needed. For me, collateral damage as a concept is not acceptable. This is why our police targets only those that are heavily involved in criminal activity and terrorist activities.
Thank you, Minister. Yes, so let me take the questions first, or do you have a comment
No,
immediately?
I have to answer that.
Okay,
There was
please. Okay.
There was a question to me, but first and foremost, it is Bosnia and Herzegovina, full name of the country. Thank you very much for using it. Second of all, yes, I agree and believe that within the European integration process, we can have much more benefit of the cooperation in fighting trans-organized crime and all the negatives from the region. Example, Bosnia and Herzegovina does not recognize the independence of Kosovo. Minister and myself, we were together at the European Union, Ylva Johansson organized meeting on stopping the proliferation of small arms and light weapons, meaning the rollout of the second review, etc. So once again, and I said it before, where there is a will, there is a way. And I'm also underlining once again, elevated political will throughout the region is a key ingredient for this.
Thank you. We'll take 3 questions. Ambassador first, Ardian, and then we'll go here.
Thanks a lot. In order to be efficient, we need to be realistic. I'm listening very carefully to the panel. Which Western Balkan 6 are we talking about when it comes to security? I think what we have seen, there are 2 situations where we can talk about Western Balkan 6. One is civil emergencies. So earthquakes, floods, etc., where everyone is in solidarity. And the second was migration. Everything else, unfortunately, I think is a very distant future. And the best we can do is look for these small steps that can be used maybe among professionals and this and that, but this is not going to change the capacity of the Western Balkans to contribute as a region to the rest of Europe. As we discussed many times, we are entering a decade of security first and foremost. Before all 6 are in NATO, it will be very hard to believe that anyone will want to exchange data or exchange information or do things that are very risky in terms of the security of that information and action, etc. So I think it's extremely important. It's great to think 2, 3, 4 steps ahead, but we have to start from the reality that we are in.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. But I think nobody would have imagined 2 years ago that one of the largest exercises like Defender 21 will have taken place in the Western Balkans, giving it a strategic importance. So
we can discuss outside of the room, yeah.
Ardian.
Two very quick questions. One for Mr. Brkic. Bosnia and Herzegovina is the only country that has not ratified the mobility agreement signed last year in Berlin on ID. What the European Union and or the Berlin process can do to make Dodik unblock it? This is a question for you. And a short question for Minister Sveçla. Kosovo, are you basically aware that you have not been successful in convincing the European Union that by what you are doing in Kosovo, you are protecting the European Union values of rule of law, of building democratic institutions? I mean, are you guys aware that you are not very performant in this? If not, I mean, that's a problem, big problem. If yes, do you have a plan on how to deal with this issue?
Thank you. We'll take the question there and then we'll answer. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. So we'll go to you, Josip, first.
Yes, Bosnia and Herzegovina did not finalize the procedure in ratification of the agreement. And yes, it's no secret that we don't have political consensus within the Bosnia and Herzegovina that it's going to, be ratified. I'm on the part of where I was expecting that this could be done because it's obviously a technical issue which supports and push entire region in the greater mobility. Why? Within the political representatives coming from Republika Srpska, predominantly President Dodik and his party, are there in a position not allowing it until the meeting in Tirana summit that we go push. I don't have the concrete answer. This could be also and it's my personal opinion, be linked with the position that the government in Berlin blocked 4 projects in Republika Srpska due to the secessionist narrative of the President Dodik in pre-election campaign last year. Maybe this is quid pro quo. I know that this Council of Ministers, Madam Kristo, pushing really hard to come tomorrow with the ratification of this and additional 2 agreements. We have to, try to find an extra mile in the political consensus in Bosnia and Herzegovina to make it happen. I don't see how Bosnia and Herzegovina can stand alone in the fact that it does not ratify the Berlin Agreement. But the inclusiveness from both sides and sides of Bosnia and Herzegovina, meaning President Dodik and his political, and also the Berlin in this particular case, I think that this is the recipe of how to get and being more successful.
Thank you. Your last comment, Minister?
Yes. Well, we are accused that we are not convincing EU. Well, why shouldn't we accuse EU that they're not seeing clearly the situation? Yes, we might fail on some things. One thing is for sure, what we aspire is European integration, but what we value is European values. We work accordingly to that. As a government, we don't want a pity, we don't want favors, we are not blackmailing EU that if they don't integrate us, we are going to do this and that. What we are doing is we are fulfilling the criteria. Now, when we are attacked and we try to explain things, we expect objectivity. I'll tell you a concrete example. Kidnapping of our 3 police officers. There were international mission officials who witnessed the scene, who in the field admitted that that is a fact, that they were kidnapped 970 meters deep in the territory of Kosovo. When it came to a level of politicians, because they were not ready to sanction Serbia for this act, they said, oh, we will wait for investigation to end and then we will declare our stance. What can we do? What can we do? We are including them in investigation.
So maybe,
No. Well, of course, I mean, we are looking for ideas. What can we do?
so
more?
maybe we can
But
continue the
We have to have
conversation
someone that hears
over
when we
lunch.
speak.
And so maybe we
Yes.
can continue the conversation over lunch, and maybe Ardian, you can offer some ideas. That's the point of all getting together. And it's great that we have the political leaders here that are listening, not just hearing, but listening to the civil society and their recommendations. I've been receiving text messages that's too late, that lunch is waiting for you, and you need to be back here at 3 o'clock for the continuation of the conference. I was privileged to moderate this session. Thank you very much to the speakers. Thank you very much to the participants. As Ambassador Vlautin said, this is going to be a topic that will be even more discussed in the future. So let's be ready and continue the conversation. Thank you.